Let's start our session. We were waiting our mayor. He's on the way, and let's start. So I propose I propose to have English as our working language. So and if you need to understand, there will be translation.
Industrial revolution. I think it has been said many times already how cities are the drivers of the modern economy, how cities are the drivers of the technology, and some figures that you have probably heard multiple times, I will also repeat. By 2050, 70% of people are expected to live in urban areas, and this is quite an increase from 5% that used to be in 1800s. This was a huge jump, not just population-wise, but also economy-wise. Right now, the global company is accounting for 80% of GDP coming from the cities as engines. Another term I'd like to introduce from the onset is the fourth industrial revolution. The technologies associated with the fourth industrial revolution, such as artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, self-driving vehicles, blockchain, big data, are rapidly changing the world around us. And nowhere else in the world is this more evident than in cities where the density and the diversity of human settlement creates perpetually evolving ecosystems ripe for innovation. And the city leadership, which we also have represented at the panel, must be aware and empowered to direct such transformation for the long-term benefit of the citizens, assuring that the efficiency of the advanced technology is balanced by innovation in policy, that decisions are made based on solid values as well as robust data, and that governors stand ready to address the challenges and opportunities that are driven by the fourth industrial revolution. We have plenty of things to discuss, and I would like to start by introducing our distinguished panel. We're still waiting for Bahit Sultanov, who I will introduce once he comes. We also have next to me Thomas Sevcik, founder and CEO of Artesia. We have Alexander Idrisov, founder and president of Strategy Partners. We have Mayor of Tallinn, Mikhail Kirvat. We have the Vice Mayor of Harbin, Van Yanmin. We have Carl Philip Konegarks, Deputy Mayor of Strategy, Head of Strategy Implementation Office of Ghent, Belgium. And we have Dominic Moxon-Trish, Director of Regulation and Public Policy at Bolt. I would like to start with you, Mr. Idrisov. And I would like to ask you a rather general question. What do you think are the key success ingredients to implementing citywide digital transformation, and how it relates to the city of Nur-Sultan?
Здравствуйте, я буду говорить на русском, потому что большинство сидящих в зале Russian speaking.
In Russian, because the majority of the audience are Russian speakers. So leadership is very important. Leadership from the mayor and his or her agenda cover technological changes. This is the most important issue which we observe in cities when we meet mayor, governor who is interested to promote digital transformation. This is the most essential factor of success. Secondly, management structure of the city. So there shall be a dedicated team headed by a qualified person, chief information officer or chief technology or digital officer. But the essence of this of the job of this person is that this person is very competent in area of technologies and well aware of the context and be familiar with all projects which are being implemented at the level of the city, and also ensuring involvement of people, citizens of the city, to search solutions for cities' problems, and also involvement of the companies who are ready to propose solutions for the cities. And the cities are distinguished when there is a good team of work, where there are achievements, because local suppliers are key success drivers, and this relates to the fact that even if you attract large vendors who, even though they have basic systems, but still competition is not here. The competition at the level of cloud solutions, and this is creative process, which where not only staff members but companies but also citizens can be involved. How financing is organized, this is next important issue. There shall be allocated budget which would cover the requirements. This shall not be the second important task, because digitalization is very important for to organize the life of the citizens. That's why digitalization funding is very important, and communicating to society, to public, continuous regular events, not only as dashboard for governor, which allows the governor to monitor the situation, and also equally to inform citizens about these or those events, solutions, progress in this or that matters, which decisions will occur tomorrow. So communication is very important. Thank you very much. So Mr. Baha Sultanov has just joined us, mayor of Nur-Sultan city, and with your permission, I will continue moderating in English, and if you will put on headphones, I will ask you.
The city that is ready for digitalization, ready for transformation. Now, we are in Nur Sultan, of course, as an Akim of the city. We have you here, and we would like to hear from you what you think are the key city challenges that could be solved by technology. That's my first question to you. My second question would be, what are the most promising technologies where innovative companies of Nur Sultan have the most potential?
Thank you for your question. I will speak Russian, please use your headphones. В первую очередь, разрешите мне
First of all, let me welcome all participants of today's session, and express gratitude for support. I bring my apologies for being late. There are too many events happening now. And in general, if before responding to your question, I would like to say that Nur-Sultan is one of the dynamically developing, growing capital cities. It is the youngest capital city in the world, and number two, the the coldest city in the world. And this creates both opportunities for us, because apart from other world capital cities in today's conditions, when we speak about fourth industrial revolution, there are too many limitations. But for us, these are opportunities, because we are starting from scratch, actually, and opening new page. And so for us, this is an opportunity, but at the same time, all these factors, of course, uh, present challenges. Additional challenge is a quick, fast level of urbanization. And our first president talked about this. 42% of people live in rural areas, and only 20% work actually in rural areas, and they contribute only 5% to GDP. And much is things happening and developing in cities, and Nur Sultan is one of the cities which was founded in a way from the small town. And 10 years ago, Astana, Nur Sultan had 500,000 people, and 10 years ago it was a city of civil servants and place of officers of national companies. And for over the decade, this city now has a population of more than 1 million, and it is the city, we want it to be a city of business and SMEs. SMEs contribute 60% to domestic gross product. And which technologies we need? Of course, we need to live in the spirit of time in order to be able to grasp everything and provide proper economy to population of the city. The more comfortable the city will be, and we want to let Nur Sultan be comfortable for creative people, for innovations, the more people would be attracted and come here. That's why for us it is very important to understand things with economy, which sectors of economy to develop, because Nur Sultan, in the context of Kazakhstan, is an industrial city. If to look at sectors, such sectors are being developed, which could not be developed in the city under the Soviet time. So, so electric locomotives, and even now they want to construct, to produce helicopters and planes. And as the first president mentioned yesterday, we live now in the very center of the earth, and labor force shall be developed in the city, and we are probably obliged to be a leader in digitalization. Спасибо.
At this panel, quite a few mayors and vice mayors, so we can tap into the experience of various regions and various people. My next question would be to you, Mr. Kilvard. It's a well-known thing that some years ago, Estonia was the first breakthrough in terms of how you use digital to get to the new level and really leapfrog on so many levels. But now, I would argue, with the development of the fourth industrial revolution, there is a huge competition in the field because everybody is equal in the face of the fourth industrial revolution. Developing and developed countries both can be at par because in developing countries their own use of technologies that are possible. For example, when there are no roads, there could be drones. When there are no doctors, there could be AI solutions. How do you, as somebody who embraced this quite early on, remain competitive? And of course, I'm not asking about the whole of Estonia, but at least on the city level, how do you remain competitive in the face of all that?
Там, наверное, раз пошла такая песня, я тоже буду по-русски отвечать.
I will also talk in Russian. Yes, 10, 15 years ago, Estonia and Tallinn could feel themselves as pioneers in area of digital technologies, and we shared our achievements, and we are sharing. We receive delegations and speak about our experience, but finally I say that this eventually brought us to the situation that when we were sitting on the back of the elephant, maybe it's strange to speak about Estonia as about as elephant. This became starting point for other countries. Our experience became starting point for other countries to move towards digitalization, and many countries are already much more advanced, and now we can't boast that we are the best. We see how many countries are well ahead of us. For us, this is a challenge, and we need to also accelerate. It would be good if we could move at faster pace, and we have, since Estonia is a small country, and Tallinn is not that big city, there are good opportunities to implement pilot projects. We have agreed with Helsinki on creation of competence center where general digital technologies could be developed not only for Tallinn and Helsinki but for the whole of Europe. And maybe it's interesting that between Tallinn and Helsinki there is agreement on the development of the concept of twin cities, and those solutions which will be achieved will work for two cities. And now there is project developed about creation of the transport ticket, which will be valid for both cities, Tallinn and Helsinki. It is planned that this will be launched already in 1 year and a half and 2 years. Of course, this is only a small part where breakthroughs are needed. There was opportunity to contact colleagues, and for sure, Kazakhstan probably doesn't have anything to learn from us, from Estonia, and probably it is Estonia who needs to learn from other countries. Of course, no one can be. Of course, electronic elections electronic elections have not been approved anywhere. People are used to comfort, and those people who do not come to election points, um, there are opportunities to do this through computer. Of course, nothing is known what then happens with those votes, but this is comfortable for people. But if to be serious and conceptual, where Estonia has really good success and is at good level, is a systemic connection with technologies, which is used for city management and government management. Databases, registers, which are integrated in one system, and their use and operation with the help of digital identification. Digital identification, digital signature make bureaucratic process simple and accessible in servicing by ordinary citizens. And as compared to Europe, as it can be seen, Estonia, Tallinn, all bureaucratic processes go much faster, and citizen of Tallinn receives the necessary information faster, and the process are not just faster, but several times faster as compared with other West European countries. That's why if someone will tell that Estonians are slow people, we are faster than others.
Reassuring that you're still quite ahead of the curve. That's true. Thank you very much for this. My next question would be to Van Yan Min, and it's actually quite related to what we have just heard. The concept of the twin cities is not new, and in this day and age, one could argue that another role the cities could play is the unit of international diplomacy. Oftentimes, the dialogue between nation states is sort of inhibited by various reasons. However, it could still keep going from city to city, on the city-to-city level. So we would very much like to hear about your experience in China, in Harbin, about your relationship with other cities on the international arena, and specifically the twin cities that you have.
尊敬的女士们、先生们，大家好！非常荣幸在这非常美好的5月来参加美丽额尔苏丹的论坛会。应该说，我也是头一次到这个国家来，在此跟大家聚一堂，畅谈友谊。在这里，我也代表中国哈尔滨政府和哈尔滨市人民，对各位表示诚挚的问候，特别是对这次主办方高水平的筹备表示衷心的感谢。当前，中哈的高水平的运行关系十分良好，两个国家的领导人的引领下呢，我们两国的战略合作的经贸。
У меня переключить, когда я вот слушаю, у меня пропадает. У вас пропадает.
А вот здесь есть.
Our president, Mr. Xi Jinping, the president of China, and the president of Kazakhstan, Mr. Nazarbayev, they pursue a significant foreign policy. But of course, the first president of Kazakhstan played an important role, and his contribution cannot be overstated in the friendly relationship between our countries. But we need to say that this cooperation exists not only on the government, on the state level, but it also exists on the city level. So there is a cooperation between the city of Harbin and the city of Nur-Sultan. We now cooperate with 36 capitals from different countries. And speaking of the city of Nur-Sultan, the city of Nur-Sultan plays an important role, a key role in the Central Asian region, and in the Eurasian region it serves as a hub. And we understand that based on the outcomes of this discussion, of today's discussion, we'll be able to find a new ground for our cooperation. And of course, I hope for closer links and for closer cooperation with a wonderful city, with such a wonderful city like Astana. And taking this opportunity, so I would like to invite all the participants to visit the beautiful city of Harbin. It is also a northern city with the northern climate, a very interesting city, and we have a huge potential for development. And taking this opportunity, I would like to invite all the participants, all of you, all of the guests, to visit our city, and thank you for your attention. Мой следующий вопрос для Томаса. Каждый раз, когда мы говорим про города и про технологии, мы не можем не говорить про людей, потому что в конечном итоге люди — конечные получатели, бенефициары всех этих преимуществ. И будучи специалистом,
You'll have to explain to some of us what that means. How does this digital urbanity and how do the technologies reconfigure the citizens and shape their lives?
Well, you know, when you talk about the fourth industrial revolution, the key word, of course, in this is industrial revolution. And many of our large modern cities are, were created or grew massively or changed or were reconfigured in this original industrial revolution. And many planning strategies, urban strategies are still from that time. The idea of separation of functions, basically to create areas where people live, areas where, there's heavy industry, there's areas where there's shopping or so, is mostly from, from the original industrial revolution. And now we're entering this age where, we have totally new type of jobs. We have a much more unclear definition of sectors. And I see many cities still trailing behind with the, recognizing that actually these changes now happened. And this digital urbanization, basically the idea that people not only walk through cities and organize their life, but they're also, walk through their smartphones and organize their life. So basically, they can also go to certain areas in cities because their smartphone tells them to do, and not because they went to a certain street, means, of course, that the cities will need to be reconfigured. And one key aspect is we need to open up the idea of these kind of functional separation, this idea of old story of zoning, which is still old school. And the private sector and private people, are basically leading the way. If you look at companies like Airbnb, is Airbnb a hotel company, or is it an apartment company, or is it living? It's unclear. So, a lot of mayors struggle to deal with these type of new functions. Are these kind of hotels or not, or should we tax them or not? Same thing with co-working or work-live. In many cities it's still not allowed to work where I live. I cannot open a company. Now SMEs, as we heard, important for Sultan. Most of small companies or innovative company started somewhere. Miss Rowling wrote her famous books, Harry Potter's books, in a coffee shop. So was this technically an office or a coffee shop? Many big companies started in garages or in any other stuff. So we need to reconfigure these functions and need to really change the way we structure these cities. So this is how to understand how these cities work. The second thing is we need to basically enable these cities to deal with this fourth industrial revolution. That means also not only to train people to be open for these new type of jobs, but we also need to understand, okay, probably these people have totally different needs. Probably we need to look for new type of urban qualities. The last 30 years were very much focused by big projects, big, large urban projects. Entire cities have been built in the last 20 years. Now, what I see worldwide, the pendulum swings back a little bit to a small urban solutions. The local solutions for local people. Quality of urban life. Also to manage density, for example. I mean, in many cities in Western Europe or United States or Latin America, we have the discussion about density. The people, or in Asian cities, it's too dense. So the quality of life needs to be higher. And often these are small solutions, and not only the big gestures we had the last 20, 30 years. People also demand from the mayors now concrete solutions for their neighborhoods or their everyday life, and not just the big museums and the big gestures. So I think this entire digital push with these changes in type of jobs and changes in type of sectors, we cannot exactly name to say, is fintech a financial sector, or is it a creative sector, creative industry sector? Unclear. So where would you put it? So that means that this idea of kind of spatial or functional separation on cities, I think, is outdated, and we need to create this new type of urban figure. And if the cities are not actively doing it, the people and companies will do it for the cities. I live in Zurich and Los Angeles, and in both cities, authorities always trying to rein in and say, okay, you cannot do this there. I have a friend in Rotterdam. He was trying to do urban agriculture in a big scale, industrial scale, in old office buildings, 70s office building, large industrial agriculture. He was not allowed because it's not official agriculture zoning. Well, yeah, it's not agriculture zoning because there's no land. It's another idea. So how do you deal with this? So I think this type of new businesses, new connections, blockchain. Blockchain is a name I didn't hear that much here at the conference for the last 2 years. 2 days. I was a little surprised. We're talking too much about other digital elements. Blockchain is the big kid on the block because blockchain is basically replacing certain elements of trust, so we can reconfigure cities also based on other things than just having people coming together who know each other. Another word I would argue, which we have to be careful, I hear too much in cities nowadays, is, let's create areas of like-minded people. Ugh. I'm not quite sure if like-minded people are really innovative. Most innovation are created because not like-minded people are together. So again, to separate functions and trying to have same companies, same sectors, same type of people together usually will not create innovation. If you look at historically innovative cities, Florence, Xi'an, later on cities in Western Europe, Flanders, by the way, Switzerland, of course, now probably US West Coast, the idea was always unlike-minded people came together and created something new. And the last point in this kind of point of the question is, we also need to explain it better. Cities need better narratives to tell their citizens. I think it's a little bit what you were also saying, the communication. They need to create their own narratives towards themselves and also towards the world. I see too much sameness about same type of strategies around the world. And cities need to be much more focused on what is their DNA, where are they good at, and how can they tackle these challenges which is coming from digitalization, blockchain, and so forth.
So much. Because you mentioned sharing, I'd like to share this microphone. You actually touched on something very, very important, among other things, Thomas. The level of trust that the new technology is creating is quite unprecedented. And to your question, what Airbnbs are, in essence, they could be called the tech companies, of course. I also heard an argument that they, in fact, could be called the international organizations of the future. Because, you know, as much as international organizations are trying to figure out the trust game and how people get to trust each other, there was never in history such a precedent when we, with ease, get into other people's cars without thinking twice. We live in other people's apartments without even knowing them, and we trust the technology to review the people for us, to review the experience for us, and to make a decision based on that. So that is quite...
So blockchain is kind of urban, you know?
Yeah.
Because you start to trust each other.
By all means. With that, my next question will be to you, Dominic. Could you tell us a bit about the mobile applications and the way that they're changing the infrastructure in cities? Because it's really fascinating how we rely so much on this kind of technology. When our battery dies, it's quite a disaster because we are, you know, it's like you lost something so important that helps you navigate around the city, you know, together with other things that you lose. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Absolutely. For those who haven't heard of us, Bolt is an Estonian company. We are operating in around 30 countries around the world. We have about 500,000 drivers in those countries, and we have 25 million customers around the world. We will be operating here in Sultan in about 3 weeks' time, and we have this morning signed a memorandum of understanding with the Deputy Mayor of Sultan, which commits us to a number of things. But to this fourth industrial revolution question, it commits us to data sharing with the city, of providing the city with access to and insights from our data as a way of us as a private sector business being able to give something back to the cities in which we operate. And to the question around, what can Sultan learn from Tallinn, or indeed vice versa, there is indeed some very sophisticated thinking around transport policy and transport planning, which is being done in places particularly like Helsinki and even more so in Tallinn, where, for example, the city authorities have just made public transport free. Now, that's a thought worth dwelling on, because the city of Tallinn has been able to do that because it has the data at hand that it's able to extrapolate what the advantage of, giving up a very short-run revenue stream and what the larger productivity benefits in terms of city planning, in terms of public transport planning, traffic management, of course. And that, I would suggest, for Sultan is a really interesting example, because the mayor of Sultan has described a city enjoying explosive growth from 500,000 to 1 million at the moment. But with that level of growth comes challenges around transport infrastructure, around, Sultan's in the process of building light rail at the moment. There are questions around, where should those rail lines run to? What should the next phase of the project be? And I think that's where we've got something to offer cities, because we can offer insights from our data sets that, for example, a certain proportion of our journeys would originate from one locale and would terminate somewhere else. And when you aggregate that data up and you apply big data techniques, all of a sudden you get something that's potentially very valuable to cities in terms of transport planning. Potentially, it also provides a basis for traffic management. It potentially will enable Sultan to avoid some of the development traps that a number of other CIS cities have fallen into, where with development comes pollution, comes traffic. And I think that's what's so exciting about this moment for Sultan, in terms of where it is in the development curve, because unlike the European cities, they're not dragging the infrastructure of the 18th century of medieval architecture and city layout around behind them. There is this opportunity to build and design and solve for the problems of today, enabled by technology. But what that means is that the technology companies that operate in this ecosystem need to be a partner to public authorities and need to proactively data share and need to recognize that you can't just try and sit on top of the city and extract value, that you're a part of the community that you serve and that there are responsibilities that come with that.
Thank you very much. Thank you indeed. And it's interesting that you're mentioning the data sets that are being collected. Again, just like with any other technology, it could be used to the good of the citizens and to the bad of the citizens. I'm sure we all heard that people are way more likely to accept the surcharge on Uber when their battery is dying. And like knowledge like that and data like that, could also be used in quite various ways. With that, my question would be to Mr. Konegrax. You are the deputy mayor for digital strategy. So figuring out things like that, including the use of data and other use of technology, is part of your responsibility. So I'd very much like to hear what the job description is for such a position, and also do you suggest that each city has to have somebody who is taking care of the digital strategy implementation?
Thank you. Well, I have to correct you already. I'm not the deputy mayor responsible for digital strategy. I'm not the deputy mayor responsible for digital strategy of Ghent. I have been the chief strategy officer of the city of Ghent for 15 years. And that's a big difference, because my job was not a political job. I didn't depend on elections to put forward a vision on strategy or digital strategy. As chief strategy officer, it was my job to accompany the process of visioning, the strategic planning and the strategic management of the city. And I was lucky enough in working with my mayor, who was a very open-minded man. He's retired now since last year. He gave a lot of space in that field. So he asked me to look back, what is the DNA of the city of Ghent? So I liked a lot what Thomas said. The DNA is actually the starting point of the strategy and the vision for the future of the city. And I started with looking at the DNA of Ghent. Ghent is a medieval city, for people that don't know it. It's in Flanders, which is a region in Belgium. It's very small, but very dense. Ghent has 260,000 inhabitants, which makes it the second largest Belgian city after Antwerp. Brussels is not a city, that's a mix of 90 municipalities. Working with that DNA meant to look at its history, and its history is founded in the Middle Ages, when it was the second largest city of Europe. And it was built by the people. And people was the core concept of looking at not only the past of the city of Ghent in terms of marketing and so on, but also looking at the future of the city of Ghent. And people became already 30 years ago the core concept of the future of the city. So Ghent started experimenting with citizen engagement in the 1980s, working on the redevelopment of certain post-industrial neighborhoods, neighborhoods that contained small houses from the 19th century, reconverting it by asking the people what their needs were, people living in those neighborhoods. And that finally evolved into a citizen engagement and co-creation strategy that was one of the guiding principles of the future strategy of the city. And also evolved into a digital strategy that put the people at the core of the future of the city. During my time at the city of Ghent, I also became member of the executive committee of Eurocities. Eurocities is the largest European city network, mainly focusing on the cities within the European Union of 250,000 inhabitants and more. And together with the city of Tallinn, who is also on the executive committee, we developed within Eurocities a model of the future, the city of the future on the European scale. Of course, starting from the already existing infrastructure that the European cities have and their DNAs. But we soon noticed that we did have one thing in common in European cities, and that is that we all were striving to get citizens on board in thinking about, firstly, and working on, secondly, their cities in the future, tackling the local challenges, but also tackling global challenges. And that was a surprising thing to see, that we as city governments, we of course know our citizens best, we are closest to those citizens. We all had processes and projects where we asked the opinion of our citizens, and we noticed that they were not as much asking for digital solutions to their needs of today. They were asking to create open cities where they can contribute to building the future, and livable cities where that can be co-created by the citizens in collaboration with other stakeholders. So the future cities became a concept that was adopted by the European cities within Eurocities, and that is also being lobbied towards the European Commission to be recognized as a full partner also in the future of Europe. And it's a concept with four different, or a recipe with four different ingredients. First of all, you need a vision. Having a long-term vision is absolutely crucial, but without a vision you can't have a strategy. Without a vision you can't have a digital strategy. Second, technology is an enabler, and there was a wise man that once said, I think in the 1960s, it was a British architect, technology is the answer, but what was the question? So the question, first of all, needs to be on the table, and the question is in the strategy that is needed to implement the vision. So that's the second recipe, second ingredient of the recipe. Third is data. Data is foundation. Data is foundation for vision. But we have to be careful in working with data. So opening up data from a city government perspective is absolutely crucial, because it's only then will it allow the development of innovative solutions to the needs of tomorrow. And also opening up to the citizens, working with citizens also on issues like privacy is absolutely crucial on the city level to build the city of the future. And the last recipe, and it's a really simple recipe actually, the last ingredient is collaboration. Collaboration in a quadruple helix model, not only for innovation, but a quadruple helix model with four strands: government, industry, civil society, citizens, and academia. Only when they can work together on an equal level playing field will they be able to innovate and look for solutions within that vision for the future, making use of the correct technologies. It's a simple recipe, but it's not so simple to implement it in a city context, because there's one big problem attached to our institutions in Europe, but for that everywhere all over the world, and that's governance. We are still hindered by a lot of barriers, like procurement procedures that do not allow to work in an innovative way with the industry, with the academia, and so on. So having a focus on those procurement procedures, but also on the way that our institutions are run, is crucial to be able to implement that recipe for the city of the future. And only then will we create cities for all, cities of people, and not only for people from a top-down perspective.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. All right, we have some 5 minutes left. We didn't start on time, let's at least finish on time. I would like to open the floor to questions from the audience. Please, if you have a question, raise your hand and we'll take your question. We only have time for 1 or 2 quick ones. Anyone? All right, then, it seems very comprehensive what we just discussed. Okay, great. Can we please have the microphone over here?
Здравствуйте. У меня вопрос к Бахыту Турухановичу.
I have a question to Mr. Sultanov. So I would like to ask, will noise insulation for Nur-Sultan city, so there are the existing standards are somewhat obsolete, And we would like to request you to think about sound insulation in newly constructed cities, because the majority of population of Astana live in multi-story apartment houses. So I would like to draw your attention to sound insulation. Probably this is not a question, but just a wish. Yes, existing standards, construction norms and standards are mandatory, still mandatory, but of course we are concerned very much about the comfort, extent of comfort for citizens and for guests, and sound insulation is very important. I agree with you, and of course we are lagging behind on some construction norms and standards, but we are ahead of some standards and norms, construction standards and norms in some other areas. So your remark is very appropriate. Thank you. Any other questions at the moment? So my name is Dauria Karabaeva. I have a question to Mr. Sultanov and Deputy Mayor from Harbin City. Could you say anything about the cooperation between these two cities, and could we be useful, because I represent Union of Architects of Kazakhstan, and we conduct forums in all cities of Kazakhstan on regular basis. It would be not only for managers, for civil servants to participate in such cities, but also for citizens, for common people to participate in this type of forum in order to feel friendship between these two cities. Да. Yes, of course, in the process of development of our cities, in the process of development of technologies, the needs of our two cities are very similar. And of course, we can discuss, and I think that we can find some common points, common solutions. Yes, there are many common cultural things, and we are located on the line of the Great Silk Route, and so new Silk Road, which is economic Silk Road. Unfortunately, Mayor of Leningan is not attending this session. Kazakhstan shall use its geographical, geopolitical advantageous position. I'm speaking about transit potential. And we are not using this potential just to let the cargoes go through, but we have now rented the port facilities in Lianyungan. Now we are cargo deliverers. So we are blessed by God to be located in these positions, and so why not to use the advantages in the context of friendly relations between these cities? We can establish really mutual advantageous cooperation. Thank you. Сейчас у нас
a little something that we didn't have time for before. There are two speakers who unfortunately couldn't join us today, but they recorded messages for us, video messages. And because I was informed that we still get to keep the room, those who are interested to stay and watch those very interesting videos are more than welcome to do so. And those videos will be by Dato Sri Idris Jalla. He's the General Director and President of Pemandu Associates in Malaysia. And we will show the video of Jerry Halton, the Chair of Board of Directors and co-founder of Global Futures Group. They have just completed a big conference on smart cities in New York, so he will be sharing insights from that. We will start showing the videos very soon, but before we do that, I would like to thank our distinguished panels, those who have physically been with us, and I would especially like to thank Mr. Akim for hosting us here in Sultan and for providing this great opportunity to have these conversations, not just this one, but all the conversations we've been having here. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.